Chapter 8. I could have pedalled straight into London by the main road, but that would never do. Too many people would see me. No, my plan for getting to London was simple, and I hoped, logically, to have no plan. If I myself did not know what exactly I was doing, then how could my brothers guess? They would hypothesize, of course. They would say, Mother took her to Bath, so perhaps she has gone there. Or, in her room, there is a book on Wales, with pencil markings and the map. Perhaps she has gone there. I hoped they would find the book, which I had placed in the dollhouse as a false clue. The meanings of flowers, however, too large to carry with me, I had hidden among hundreds of other stout volumes in the library downstairs. Mycroft and Sherlock would imply inductive reasoning, therefore, I reasoned, I must trust to chance. I would let the land show me the way eastward, choosing the stoniest ground or whatever should show my tire marks the least. It did not matter where I found myself at the end of that day or the next. I would dine upon bread and cheese, I would sleep in the open like a gypsy, and eventually, wandering along, I would encounter a railway line. By following it one way or the other, I would find a station, and so long as it was not Shortsley, where my brothers would surely inquire from me, any station in England would do, for all railways ran to London. So much for a 17-inch waist, oatmeal for breakfast, and wool next to the skin, matrimonial prospects, the accomplishments of a young lady, etc. Such were my happy thoughts as I pedalled across a cow pasture, along a grassy lane, then on to open moorland and away from the countryside I knew. In the blue sky overhead, larks sang like my heart. As I kept to byways and avoided villages, not many people saw me. An occasional farmer looked up from his turnip field, unsurprised by the sight of a gentleman upon a bicycle. Such cycling enthusiasts had grown increasingly common. Indeed, I met just another such a beige-clad figure upon a gravel wagon truck, and we nodded in passing. She looked all of aglow from the heat and the exercise. Horses sweat, you know, and men perspire, whereas ladies glow. I am sure I looked all of aglow also. Indeed, I could feel all of aglow trickling down my sides, beneath my corset, the steel ribs of which jabbed me under the arms most annoyingly. By the time the sun stood overhead, I felt quite ready to stop for luncheon, all the more so as I had not slept the night before. Seated under the spreading elm tree upon a cushion of moss, I badly wanted to lie down and pillow my head there for a while. But after I had eaten, I forced myself to get back upon the bicycle and pedal onward, for I knew I must get away as far as possible before the pursuit began. That afternoon, aptly enough, considering my thoughts of gypsies, I met with a caravan of the nomad folk in their brightly painted round-topped house wagons. Most gentry despised gypsies, but mother had allowed them to camp sometimes upon the Ferndale estate, and as a child I had been fascinated by them. Even now I halted my bicycle to watch them pass, gazing eagerly upon their many-colored horses, prancing and tossing their heads despite the heat, with the drivers needing to hold them in more than urge them forward. And I waved to the travellers in the wagons without fear, for of all the people on earth, gypsies were the least likely to speak of me to the police. The men darkly ignored me, but some of the bare-headed, bare-necked, bare-armed women waved back, and all of the ragged children waved and squealed and called out, begging. Shameless, dirty, thieving lot, Mrs. Lane would have called them, and I suppose she was right. Yet, if I had been carrying pennies in my pocket, I would have thrown some at them. Also, that afternoon, on a country road, I met a travelling peddler, his wagon hung round with tinware and umbrellas, and baskets and sea sponges, and bird cages and washboards, and all manner of trifles. I stopped him, and had him show me everything in his stock, from copper kettles to tortoise-shell combs for the back of the hair, in order to disguise my purpose before I bought the one thing I really needed, a carpet-bag. Laying it across my handlebars, I pedalled on. I saw other wayfarers, on foot and in conveyances, ranging from coach and four to donkey carts, but my memories became faulty as my weariness blurred the day. By the time night fell, every part of my person ached, and I felt fagged as never before in my life. Walking now upon turf cropped to the roots by sheep, pushing my bicycle and leaning upon it, I struggled up a low limestone-studded hill on top of which stood a grove of beeches. Once I reached the concealment of the trees, I let my bicycle fall where it would, while I myself collapsed in dirt and last year's leaves, my spirits as low with evening as they had been high with morning, for I wondered, would I find strength to get on the bicycle again tomorrow? I could sleep where I was, unless, for the first time I thought, what if it rained? My plan not to plan seemed more foolish with every panting breath I drew. After I had despaired for a while, I managed to stagger up, and in the concealed darkness, take off my hat, hairpins, and the baggage I carried on my person, along with my tormenting corset. Too weary to even think of food, I folded to the ground again, and wearing petticoats and my much soiled taupe suit as my only covering, fell asleep within moments. So nocturnal had my habits become, however, that some time late at night I awoke. No longer the least bit sleepy, I felt famished, but there was no moon tonight. The sky had clouded over. It might indeed rain. And without moonlight or even starlight, I could not see to find myself the food I had packed in the box on the bicycle, nor could I see to find, for the sake of light, the tin matches I had stupidly left in the same place. I would consider myself fortunate if I stumbled upon the bicycle at all. Curses! I muttered naughtily, feeling beech twigs scratch my face and catching at my clothing as I lurched to my feet. But the next moment I forgot about food. I stood staring for no great distance. I saw lights, gas lamps, glimpsed between the trunks of the hilltops, trees. They twinkled in the distance like earthbound stars. A village. I had come up on one side of the hill not knowing, and too weary to realize that a village lay on the other side. A town, rather, being large enough to have gas laid on. A town with, perhaps, a railway station. And even as I thought it, there came floating to my ears across the dark of night a train whistle's long tenor call. Very, very early the next morning I stole out of the beech woods, so early I hoped that few, if any folk, would catch sight of me. Not that I was afraid anyone would recognize me. It was just that it would look a bit odd for a well-dressed widow, on foot with a carpet bag, to emerge from such primitive lodging. Yes, a widow. Head to toe, I wore the black garb of mourning I'd taken from my mother's closet. The costume, by indicating that I had been married, added a decade or more to my age, yet allowed me to wear my comfortable old black boots, which would not be unnoticed, and my hair in a simple bun which I could manage. Best of all, it made me nearly unrecognizable. Hanging from the brim of my black felt hat, a dense black veil enveloped my entire head, so that I rather looked as if I intended to raid a beehive. Black kid leather gloves covered my hands. I had made sure of this detail as I lacked a wedding ring, and a dull black silk covered me from my chin to my black booted toes. 10 years ago, Mum had been thinner, so her dress fit me nicely with my corset barely tightened at all. Indeed, no corset would have been necessary if it were not to support my improvised baggage in the necessary areas. What I packed on the bicycle I now carried in the carpet bag or in my pockets. Disliking to dangle a reticule, my mother had provided all her dresses with ample pockets for handkerchief, lemon drops, shillings and pence, etc. Blessings be upon the stubbornly independent head of my mother, who was also the one who had taught me to ride a bicycle. I regretted having to abandon that faithful mechanical steed to the beech woods, but I most certainly did not regret abandoning my ugly taupe suit. In the grey half-light of daybreak, I stole downhill along a hedge to a lane. Very stiff from yesterday's exertions, I realized that my aches and pains were actually a blessing. They forced me to walk slowly. Thus, at a ladylike gait in keeping with my disguise, I made my way along the lane to a gravel road, and so into town. Dawn had progressed to a dull sunrise, threatening rain. Shopkeepers were just opening their shutters. The iceman was hitching up his backed nag to make his rounds. A yawning maid threw a bucket of something unspeakable into the gutter. A ragged woman swept a street crossing. Newsboys heaved sacks of the morning edition towards the curb. A match seller sitting in a corner, a beggar, really cried, "Let there be light! A match for the gentleman!" Some of those who passed were indeed gentlemen in hot top hats, others workmen in flannels and caps, yet others nearly as ragged as himself. But he cried, "Gentlemen!" to them all. He made no attempt to sell a match to me, of course, for ladies did not smoke. Belvedere Tonsorium, declared, gold letters painted on the glass of a door beside a red and white spiral-striped pole. Ah, I had heard of a town called Belvedere satisfactorily distant from Kindford. Looking about me, I saw Saving Bank of Belvedere carved upon the stone lintel of a statue building nearby. Very good, I had achieved my goal. Well done, I thought, picking my way between horse droppings, for a mere girl of limited cranial capacity. Onions, potatoes, parsnips, called a man pushing a barrow. Fresh carnation for the gent's buttonhole, cried a short woman offering flowers from a basket. Shocking kidnap! Read all about it, bellowed a newsboy. Kidnapping? Viscount Tewkesbury snatched from Basilweather Hall? I did indeed want to read about it, but first I wanted to find the railway station. But with this in mind, I followed a top-hatted, frock-coated, kid-gloved gentleman who was positioning a fresh carnation upon his lapel. Formally dressed, perhaps, he was going to the city for the day. Affirming my hypothesis, soon I heard the rumble of an approaching engine crescendo to a roar that shook the pavement beneath my boots. Then I could see the peaked roof and turrets of the station, with a clock in its tower reading just 7:30, and I could hear the shriek and whine of brakes as the train pulled in. Whether my unwitting escort travelled to London, I will never know, for as we approached the station platform, my attention was all taken by the scene unfolding there. A gawking crowd had gathered. A number of constables formed a line to keep the onlookers back, while yet more officials in blue uniforms strode forward to meet the newly arrived train. An engine pulling a single car, importantly labelled Police Express. Out of this stepped several men in travelling cloaks. These swept the ground impressively enough, but the ear flaps of the matching cloth caps, done up in bows atop their heads, looked like little bunny ears. Quite silly, I thought, as I started to edge through the crowd towards the ticket window of the station. As I walked into a pot on the boil, around me bubbled voices, excited voices. It's Scotland Yard, right enough. Plain clothes, detectives. I heard they sent for Sherlock Holmes too. Oh my goodness. Halting eagerly, I listened. But he won't come. He's called away by family. The speaker passed by, confounded. Had heard no more of my brother, although other babble aplenty. My cousin's the second assistant upstairs maid at the big house. The Duchess has gone clean out of her head, folks say. And she says and the Duke is fit to be tied. Old Pickering at the bank says they're still waiting for a ransom demand. Who'd want the boy if not for ransom? It would seem that the shocking kidnapping had taken place close by. Indeed, watching the detectives pile into quite a lovely landau, I saw them being trotted off towards a green park not far beyond the train railway station. Above the trees rose the grey Gothic towers of, from the talk about me, Basilweather Hall. How interesting. But first things first, I must purchase a ticket. However, according to the large schedule posted upon the station wall, there will be no lack of trains to London, every hour or so all day and into the evening. Duke's son gone missing! Read all about it! Shrieked a newsboy standing beneath the schedule. While no believer in Providence, I had to wonder how chance had placed me here, on this scene of crime, and my brother the great detective, elsewhere. My thoughts became unruly, and their lure irresistible. Abandoning my attempt to reach the ticket window, I bought a newspaper instead.